Today, I'm going to be showing you how easy it is to create new asset views with the PI Integrator for Business Analytics, and then bring these views into our business intelligence or business analytics tools. And I'll also show the setup for the PI ODBC Driver so we can access these views. First, what do I mean by a view? Well, our business intelligence or business analytics tools are looking for data in this row-column format. And so what we're doing is we're essentially translating the data from our PI system into this type of format. And once we do this, we can do some really big picture analysis with these BI tools. For example, let me show you this end result. And this is just part of the analysis that I'm doing across all the drilling rigs in our corporation to look at across all the different wells that we've drilled, what factors are really going to help us complete the wells the fastest. So what I want to do is take a step back and show you exactly how I built the view and brought this data into my business intelligence tool. So let's rewind. So as you can see, this is the client machine where I'm going to be authoring the business analytics displays. I have several BI tools installed on this machine, and so the first thing that I need to do when creating a new asset view is I need to open a web browser, and I'm going to navigate to the URL for the PI Integrator for Business Analytics. So remember from our installation video, we simply need to specify the fully qualified domain name, and then colon. If you have a non-default port number, you'll need to specify that too. In my case, mine's the default, but I'm just going to show you here. We'll need to log in. And the first thing we see when we open the UI is the My Views, the views I've already created. But I can create an asset view, or similarly, create a new asset view here. And as I create a new view, the first thing I want to think about is, what's the data that I'm actually interested in bringing in? What's the end result I want to have in my business intelligence client? Because that's going to drive the view and the decisions I need to make when I'm configuring it. In my case, I'm going to do an analysis where I look across all of our drilling rigs that are used to drill different wells. So then that way I can basically assess what factors help us drill the wells the fastest. So the first thing I'm going to do is give this new asset view a name, and then create asset view. And step one is to select the data. Over here on the left, I'm going to choose my AF server and then connect to my AF database. I happen to be connecting to a server that has many AF databases, but you might only see one here. So I've connected to my AF database. The first thing I want to do is find one of the assets that I'm interested in looking at. So I'm going to navigate this structure and find one of my drills. Okay, and then I'm going to select drill 1. You can see that once I've selected my asset, all the attributes for that asset show up here. I could select individual ones to add, or I'm going to actually select all, hold, and then drag them into the shape. And here I can choose, do I want to include all of these AF attributes? For example, in my case, I'm actually not interested in bringing well name because I'm already bringing in well ID. And I'm only going to be using well ID in my analysis, so I can remove that. One thing I want to draw your attention to is that you can see over here for the match, we only have drill 1. But as I told you at the beginning, I want to bring in all of my drilling rigs. How can I do this? Well, I'm going to switch back to the middle column here and edit drill 1. So you can see that right now I'm essentially filtering by the asset name, and so I only have one asset named drill 1. But my AF structure actually has all the drill rigs built off of an asset template. So I'm actually going to filter by asset template instead. And it's my rig. And then hit save. Great, and you can see how easy it was for me to quickly identify all the assets that I want to bring in for my analysis. And then I'll hit Next. This next part is really about modifying the view, or that row column representation for our BI tools. You can see a preview of it down here. And this is basically returning the top 100 rows that meet the criteria. Okay, now you'll notice that this is for this start and end time. So basically right now I'm just looking at the last 8 hours, and it's interpolating every 1 minute. And you can see that each row is corresponding to this. And I have the asset and then I have its attributes as my columns. Okay. But I can do more than just bring in data in the stage. I can augment it. So for example, I'm going to show you the add column. In add column, one of the options I can do is that for example, bit position, instead of bringing the value, I could maybe do the average or the minimum. So this is an option that's available for augmenting your data. I can also switch over to the time column, and this is what I'm particularly interested in just for this analysis. I'm interested in looking at how the time of day affects our drilling performance. For example, at the end of the shifts, do we tend to see that there are more problems or lower performance? So rather than just keeping the timestamp, I'm actually also going to add a new column for hour. So I'll select hour, I'll push it over, and then hit display 2 time columns. What this is going to allow me to do is in my BI tool, I can now see the data basically aligned by the time of day. And you can see here's my new column, and so it's matching up all the local times between 3 and 4 are going to get the 3 for the hour. Okay, so I've added to my data. I can also filter data out if needed. So I'll show you the edit row filters. So one of the filters is doing numeric. That's the first one here. I'm going to show you this one. In my case, let's say I have been having some problems with some of my equipment and they have been reporting erroneous values, negative numbers. So clearly there's a problem with the instrumentation. I don't want to bring in that data into my analysis because those values are incorrect. So what I can do is actually cleanse them here. Let's say I've been having this problem specifically with my top drive RPM measurements. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a filter, and I'm going to say greater than or equal to 0. And this is going to allow me to filter out any negative values that I received, which were obviously incorrect and I don't want to include in my analysis. So I can hit Save Numeric Row Filter. And I actually can keep adding. I can add additional filters. For now, I'm going to go ahead and hit Close. Finally, let's look at this Edit Value mode. By default, you can see it's interpolating and sampling the values every 1 minute. However, one thing I could do is I could use this key column. For example, in my case, I know that the ROP, or rate of penetration, is a key factor in assessing the well completion time. So what I can do is I can use this as a key column, and rather than interpolating values simply every 1 minute, what it will do is we'll get a row and we'll get the corresponding AF attributes every time we have a change to the ROP value. So I'll go ahead and save those changes. One thing that you can see right away is that my preview now shows no data found in top 100 matches. And that's because actually I have not received any new data for ROP because I'm actually shut down and none of our drilling rigs are being used today. So let me show you a different time period. So I'm actually going to go back in time to when we first started our drilling operations. And then hit Apply. And now we have data in our preview. For the sake of this video, I'm actually not going to be bringing in such a large time range of data because this is going to correspond to millions of rows. And I've actually created a view already for this. And this just simply takes more time. but I want to show you the completion during the video, so I'm going to do a smaller time range here. I'm just going to simply do 1 day, and then I'll hit apply. Now that I've applied this new time range, I can go ahead and hit next. Here I'll need to specify the target configuration. So all editions of the PI Integrator for Business Analytics support PI View, that's the default, and I'm going to go ahead and show creating the PI View here. Some editions of the PI Integrator for Business Analytics support different types of targets, such as a SQL Server database, and you could switch to that here. I'll also need to specify if I want this to run once or to run on a schedule. In my case, the time frame that I'm looking at is completely in the past, so I'm just going to have this run once. But if my end time was now, and I used star or the asterisk as a relative time reference, I might want to run on a schedule, and then that way I can continue to bring in more data to my PI view. Then I'll hit publish. It's important to note that once published, a view cannot be modified. And the details just reaffirm this. In my case, I know that this is a view that I want to create and that I am accepting that the view will count against the total number of license streams I have. And then I'll hit confirm. Okay, so now we can see down here that this view is being published. And while it's publishing, I want to prepare the PI ODBC driver. Okay, so remember, this is the machine, and what I need to do is make sure that I have the PI ODBC driver installed on this machine. If you haven't already downloaded the install kit, you can get it from the tech support website, techsupport.osisoft.com, and make sure to get the latest version of the PI ODBC driver. So I have already downloaded the install kit for the PI ODBC Driver 2015. And I'm going to navigate to that install kit right now. So I am logged onto this machine as my user. My user is in the local administrators group, and I'm going to right-click and make sure I run this install kit as the administrator. Hit OK. If you prefer to have your files extracted to a specific location, specify that here, as I have done. Okay, hit OK. Alright, and I've installed the PI ODBC drivers. The next thing I need to do is configure them. So I'm going to type ODBC, and I'm going to run the ODBC data sources 64-bit. So this opens the ODBC data source administrator, and I'm actually going to set this up on a system level because I want all users on this machine to be able to see this data source. I'll say add, and I'm going to want to select the PI Integrator for Business Analytics here. I'll hit finish. And then I just need to give it a name, a description, and specify the machine where I've installed the PI Integrator for Business Analytics. Once I've specified the name, then I can test connection. I can see it succeeded, so that's configured now as well. Let's go back to the UI and see if our view is published. Okay, I can see that it has, so I'm ready to bring my PI view into my business intelligence client tools. As you can see, I was able to really quickly bring data from my PI system into my business intelligence and business analytics tools to create new displays.